Hello, welcome to Fitness Without Filter with me, Richard Paul, for your host. Today I'm speaking to James, who owns PFP Gym in Devon. He's got two sites, one in Exeter and one in Columpton, and we're going to talk about his success putting up his business and a lot of other things besides. So, hi, James, and how are you doing?
Richard, thanks very much for having me on your podcast. This is quite a privilege. Thank you.
No problem.
All well in the sweltering heat, but I'm in the shade, so I'm good to go, mate.
Fantastic. Right, okay, so you and I have been talking via social media and other things for quite some years. In fact, I figured out the day it was quite a long time ago that you and I started pinging backwards and forwards. How did you come to be where you are today, an owner of a multi-site gym business?
Um, well, I mustn't say it's through no business kind of cleverness on my behalf, but long story short, I'd been in the military for a long time, and I had the buffer of a pension, so that's always useful. And then I started out um, back about 15, 16 years ago as a personal trainer in Fitness First, which of course I don't know if you know Exeter, but that was kind of the only gym in town. So you had a kind of
Yeah.
captive audience. So that was great. Um, and then I thought, well, I'm getting too old and smelly to kind of cut around in lycra amongst these young things. So I thought, well, I just got to find a little place so I can do kind of one-to-one stuff. And then you can see how it evolved. I got a little place for one-to-one, and then I opened a gym, and then I opened a mezzanine, and then I opened another gym, and so on and so forth. Um, and that is a long story short. I kind of fell into everything, kind of floated around, so it worked quite well.
Okay. And you say it'll be doing very well because you've got two sites at the moment. So that's got to be a good indication. I'm sure at the moment, like we talked about before we start recording, the industry's got its ups and downs. And at the moment, cost of living and everything else, hopefully we're all doing well and looking good for the future.
It's an interesting thing actually. So once again, going back in time, when I opened this gym, it became a bit of a niche gym for strength and conditioning, strongman training, Olympic lifting. That's slightly
Mm-hmm.
different type of training from a normal gym, and that was fine. I went with it. Um, and then over the years in Exeter, there's now there's gyms on every street corner, which is great for the punter. But for then someone like me who had a kind of a niche market and I was the only independent gym around,
Mm-hmm.
it's dropped off a little bit. Having said that, that's an extra. But the Columpton gym, where it's the only real gym of its kind, really, I guess, that's flying. So
Mm-hmm.
you never know. But you kind of have to be nimble on your feet when it comes to owning any business, of course, but especially the gym one, and kind of keep looking around for opportunities and what would work and what not work, even equipment, classes, studios, other gym members, personal trainers, coaches. Just keep a broad mind, and people come to you. That's what I think. Whether it happens or not, we'll see.
Yeah, well, I'm keeping fingers crossed for you for the future, buddy. I mean, I've been following, as I said, been aware of you and your business for some time. I mean, you've got some of the Exeter Chiefs rugby guys and girls coming in your place. You've had Brian Shaw in there. You've had quite an eclectic, bunch of people coming through your doors.
I have been quite lucky, and once again, it goes back to kind of giving people what they want. So with the strongman stuff and Brian Shaw and Lawrence Charley and a couple of the other people coming down, it's the members that suggest it, and I kind of go, okay, mate. Do you see what I mean? Rather than thinking it's a problem,
Right. Sure.
we can make this happen. So that's once again, it's not really me being clever. It's just kind of going yes to ideas. And the Chiefs boys, of course, they've got their own S&C coaches, and I wouldn't pretend that I'm part of that setup, but certainly during the off season and maybe some are doing rehab and stuff, they trickle in and out, um, and that's great because you see these kind of top end athletes doing their thing, and it's quite inspirational watching them do their different forms of training, how they do speak to their S&C coaches, and I guess I've got a couple of kind of national level Olympic lifters. When I say me, they use the gym, nothing to do with me. And once again, it's interesting watching how they train and what they do, and rather than the kind of your standard format that you might see in what you might call a commercial gym, you see different things, and we have GB bobsleigh, and all I'm saying is it's quite nice. I learn from watching other people rather than they learning from me far more. So it's quite a nice thing.
Do you think the general public then would benefit from more of a strength and conditioning approach to their fitness goals and their training, as opposed to just being allowed to wander around, loosely in a commercial gym. I certainly do from my experience, but what do you think on that?
Well, there's a couple of parts to that. I think, firstly, if you can simply get people interested in the gym, or at least not feeling intimidated by the gym,
Mm-hmm.
that's a massive step. So maybe don't overcomplicate things at first, I think is a great idea. So they get used to even just wandering around and playing a little bit. But then anyone that shows any vague bent to it, then maybe some form of semi structure to their week or their month or their cycle of training, I think would be a good idea. Now, and I think probably the question fall out with that, how complicated does it have to be? And I don't think it has to be complicated for most of us general public.
Mm-hmm.
Just go in and do a split or full body work or whatever you want to do, and then kind of enjoy yourself. Work as hard as you feel you need to, which is another subject. And well, to answer your question, yes, everyone will benefit, I think, from some vague plan. Yeah, I definitely think that.
Okay, which leads me nicely into the next thing I was going to ask you. If you were to have a new guy or girl walk into the gym tomorrow and say to you, I'm literally having no real clue where I'm going, as a general population kind of client, how would you go about advising them to address the collective whole, both their attitude to changing their lifestyle and diet and exercise? Because I know you've got a very, very broad scope of knowledge. How would you direct them from the first steps?
That happens all the time. As you can imagine, people kind of wandering in and say, I want to lean up, I want to get fitter, I want to get stronger. And I kind of, once you narrow it down, what do people want? And generally, most people just want to look better, feel better, lose a bit of fat. And, there's nothing wrong with that at all. And we all want that. So there's no need to be too kind of elitist about that type of goal. And I think the first thing you must do is speak to someone and listen to what they're saying. So if someone comes in and says, you look at them and ask the questions and make sure it's about them so they feel comfortable talking to you.
Yes.
That's really important. Rather than me blasting with information, go on keto, go on paleo, start doing squats, do HIIT training, blah, people go, oh my God, that's too much information. And then get them in for, I think what I normally do after all the flowery talk, I say, come in for a session, a kind of a suck it and see session. And it's nearly always a full body one, nearly always. And we go gently, we establish a rapport, get a bit of a sweat on if that's what you want to do, not too crazy. So they leave feeling good about themselves and having achieved something. And of course, at the back of my mind, I'm writing notes as I see it, say, okay, split squat, they can't do a squat because their bum tucks under, we'll do split squats instead, don't do deadlifts, their back's rounding, therefore we'll do back extensions and so on and so forth. So although I'm trying to project a kind of relaxed, trust me type of attitude, meanwhile in the brain I'm going to writing down, so the next time they come in, if they do, one, they've realized I'm not a bad bloke, hopefully, and two, I've then got a plan. And it's not too complicated, as you're well aware yourself. You've been doing it a long, long time. It's not rocket science, none of this. For most of us, it can get kind of rocket science-y, but generally it doesn't need to be. So I think that, to go back to answer your question, I think it's up to the person they're speaking to, i.e. me or you, to be personable. That's really important. And then not make life too complicated. And the third point is try not to overload too much information on kind of day one, trickle bits into them, and that seems to work quite well. And then, sorry to waffle on.
No, not at all.
After I've done a session with them, let's say they say, I want to lose weight and I want to do it. Then I say, listen, we've done a session and that's good. If I could simply photocopy that for you and off you go. Or probably, but you probably want to come see me just for a nutritional consultation. And that is basically where you want to be at. And normally if they follow that, they're going to do okay.
That's it. And go from there.
Yeah.
All right. So as we talked again before we started recording, I've taken a bit of a pause given lifestyle changes from coaching people and everything else. Are you still finding you partly beat your head against a wall? People come to you with these ideas of nutrition, or is there a general consensus of intelligence out there now when it comes to, okay, I can sort my nutrition, I know what I'm doing, I need to see you for the exercise?
Interestingly,
being diplomatic, because I'm sure you're going to be.
People are far more aware of the different I hate to say the different methods of eating, which of course anyway, the different information I should say that's out there, but because they're aware, people seem to be even more confused.
Mm-hmm.
So I nearly every time I get people telling me, yeah, I eat healthily, and then I ask, okay, what do you have for breakfast? And then I can either gauge, that's not too bad. I go, actually, that's not the best. But I try not to project negativity at all.
Sure.
I never kind of judge on day one. I judge on day two, but not on day one. But to answer your question, there's so much information. Intermittent fasting, paleo, keto, carnivore, vegan. Everywhere you go, there's 20, 16-8. And what the hell does all this mean? Oh my God. You know, so if they can speak to someone, yourself maybe, or myself, whatever, and they trust what you're saying, that's the key, then you give them the gold standard. No one really does the gold standard, but at least you've given it.
Mm-hmm.
But I always try to give people a get out clause to say, all right, that's the gold standard. That's where you want to be if you can. But, don't worry if you're dropping down a little bit, you're getting and that's it. Now, to add to that, waffling on a little bit, when I was young, 15 years ago, I was a bit of a dictator. I'd say, just do, well, I think because I was a Poliquin guy, it was do this, do that, no excuses. And
Mm-hmm.
I probably came across bullshit and a bit of a dick. And now, I realize that perhaps some pointers, keep reminding people, that's very important. Keep reminding people, well, what did you have for breakfast? I had a really good, James, I did this. And you go, well, that's really good, but maybe try that. And there is a gender difference that you'll know, I'm sure. Males, and hopefully this won't sound sexist, but it's the truth. Males, if they trust you, they'll generally do pretty much what you say to them, black and white. They go, yeah, tell me what I need to do, James, or whoever. And they go, yeah, I'll do that. If they fall off the wagon and say, yeah, I cocktail up on Saturday, I want a couple of pints and so on and so forth, you go, yeah, don't worry. Women, it's a little bit more nuanced, and that your trust is hard fought, shall we say. So you really have to build up a rapport to get the girls on board. But, that's up to you as a manager to do that.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you mentioned the nuance between men and women in training, because I've experienced similar things, although having worked a bit more internationally than just around Devon, there's a cultural shift depending on where you are in the world, because I've had that same experience. I've also had it the absolute opposite. I worked in parts of the world where it's not just the culture that I'm where I'm living at. It's expats living in that space where it's very, very easy to get the women who want results to just like, okay, I'm sold, you know what you're doing, and go. Yeah. And the guys have got the expats sort of like a bit more money about, a bit more of a lifestyle going on. They think they know everything after the second session, and you're trying to rein them in to go, no. Doing shit your way is what got you where you are. We need to step away from that.
And would you think that is, you mentioned there they've probably got a bit more money, a bit more success, and they're a bit more affluent, you would say, and therefore you're just the hired help, so why should we listen to you type thing?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, that is part of it. It's an attitude that is based from definitely a socioeconomic situation, which is you're just someone else I've hired. Not everyone's like that, of course. And as they get to know you, regardless of where you're working, this is someone I actually like because I'm going back to them and I'm paying them over and over again, or at the very least respect their knowledge. But there's an interesting shift. Certainly, depending on where you are. I mean, I'm trying to think just quickly in my head the different nationalities of women that I've trained as an example. British, Canadian, American, Australian, South African, Egyptians, Saudi, Emirati. And like I say, depending on where you are in the world, there's a very, like some people are more willing to trust you and jump straight on board with what you say. And others are, like you said, a case of, but you drag them in because their own ego or their own reluctance to change and a bunch of other hurdles. It's interesting you say that's the dynamic in the UK, or certainly in this part of the UK, because I've not done much work here for 15 years. Right. So if I move into one-on-one training again, that would be an interesting observation.
And well, I think the human nature doesn't change much, perhaps. But I think I try not to, if people are, what's the word I look for, maybe slightly negative towards me, I kind of go, whatever. I try not to let that affect how I am.
Mm-hmm.
I just let Oh, my dog's here. Look around. Sit still.
Oh, that's all right. Mine's downstairs. I know how that goes.
Off, go on, Matthew, off. I try not to affect how I deal with things. Whereas before, I'd be, that bloody person X, Y, Z. And now I just go, I said what you need to do. And if you don't, it's fine by me.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get too stressed about other people.
Mm.
I just do the best I can, leave them to it. And then I'm in the fairly decent where I can slough people off if I'm not happy, because an hour of my life I don't really need to waste on people. So I just kind of go, you're not for me type of thing. That's it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I worked with clients before. I'm like, okay, you want to do this. You're not just having a bad attitude, but very clearly, I'm not the coach for you for whatever reason. And like you said, I've gone, okay, so tell you what, we're going to finish this contract, and now I'm going to find someone I think is more suited to your temperament or your personality or your schedule or whatever it might be. And if they don't want to find their own coach, I'll find someone that I can trust to work with them at the level that they need. Because like you said, sometimes people just don't gel together.
And that's very true for everything, not only personal training.
Yes, very, very, very much true. Yeah, it is. So if we stay with the gender division for a moment, then I'm not going to approach a modern conversation on that topic. As you know, where that could go. Why do you think it still is then that there's a degree of women that move towards the fitness and the gym world that are reluctant to go near anything heavy? Why is that still a part of the mindset around exercise? Because I'm going to get bulky, I'm going to look like a bloke. If it was that easy, men would all look like Arnie did in his heyday.
Yeah. I wish it was the case. And if I wrote an article about this very thing ages ago, where just to branch off slightly, some women, if their DHA sulfate hormonal levels are quite on the male side, can bulk up fairly easily.
Mm-hmm.
Bad thing. So you need to be mindful of that. Most, of course, won't. And then if you look at the others, you look at some of these CrossFit girls at the top end, they're amazing. And they can bulk up too. Traps, just doing cleans and snatches and all that business. Some can bulk up too, and I can understand why some, what you might call normal girls, for want of a better description, would be wary of that. There is quite a lot of steroid use, of course, as well, but that's by the by. And I think the general perception from 10, 15, 20 years ago is, don't lift weights, you'll bulk up. And that's just taking its time to die. I think it's just as simple as that. I really, really do. And just some of because CrossFit now seems to be what people perceive as the gold standard.
Mm-hmm.
Just some of those girls on the internet, they are quite stacked.
Yes, very much so.
There you go, I think. But I think it will soon die off, and people, the girls, in my opinion, girls should be lifting heavy and less reps than the boys from a cosmetic or aesthetic point of view. So, rather than doing 3 sets of 10, I reckon the girls should be doing 10 sets of 3. But that's by the by. We can talk about programming, or of course we can. But heavy and less reps, as you know, don't produce much bulk at all.
No.
Volume and intensity do. So
yeah, the difference in training stimuli. Yeah, I used to use as an example. I've long time ago. This is, I'm going to relate to this in a reasonable minute. I got away from a kind of paper that I could, because it made just life a pain in the ass having to carry folders around. So I did everything on my iPad, and I used to have examples of things I knew were going to points coming up on there, and I always used to show some of the would-be clients of mine, the women. I don't want to get big and bulky. Okay, right. You don't want to look like this. Showing pictures, correct? Right. Okay. This is what this woman's doing to look like this, and then show them, let's say, an Olympic powerlifter. One of the ones who are naturally still very feminine in their aesthetic. And they're right. This is someone who can happily clean and jerk 2-3 times their body weight. They still look like someone you'd see on the beach. So it's not compulsory. You're going to look like me because you started deadlifting. So don't panic.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to lay those fears. Yeah. Do you think then that social media and the whole body beautiful thing is driving drugs when it comes to fitness and that? Because personally, I do.
God, yes.
I think it's the general public. I don't think realize how prevalent drug use is, especially in the fitness industry.
God, yes, it's awful, and it's even more awful that anyone now in shape.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, there's a lot of drug use. Yes. Second of all, anyone that's in shape is being accused of being on drugs, whether they're not or the other.
Yes.
So that shows you how difficult it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can be, work really, really hard, get in whatever you call decent shape. And people go, if he's on the gear, well, actually, he or she may well not be, and probably, and may well not be. But certainly, you see and hear a lot of people on the gear, and it's a lot of it going on.
Yes.
It would be nice. I mean, it's difficult to kind of discuss it, really. It's just, yes is the answer. There's lots of it going on, and social media is making it worse because there's all these good-looking people cutting around. I'm not saying how much gear they're on. Wouldn't it be nice if people would say, well, I got in this shape because, I took X, Y, Z, and I trained hard, and I ate well, and I took, PEDs, performance-enhancing drugs. That'd be quite refreshing, wouldn't it, of course?
It would be very, yes.
But of course, the people don't, because they're so ashamed. Well, don't be. Just, I'd admire someone that said, I take this and do that, but I train hard, and they go, yeah, fair enough, mate.
I can't remember the guy's name, but I think towards the end of last year, maybe the start of this year, there was a South African bodybuilder who came from literally nowhere on social media and had this huge following on YouTube very, very quickly, because he did exactly what you and I have just talked about. He said, yeah, I have done this, 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 and this, and I look like this. I don't recommend it because I know the health complications I might now encounter in my later life. So I can give you all the advice you want as a personal trainer. I will not tell you to do what I've done.
Yeah, well, then you can make up your own mind.
Yeah, exactly. And that was his point. He was just like, yeah, okay, I've done this, 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 and this. I did discover a while back on Instagram, there's I think it's an IFBB Pro. She's doing a similar thing. All of her posts are, a lot of people are taking this drug and this drug and this drug as a stack arrestor, and these are the consequences. This is the water retention. This is the effect of your menstrual cycle, because she tends to talk from a woman's point of view. And she, again, has got a very large following. But it's the rarity of that.
Yeah, and that would be great, because I'd like to look at that and follow and learn something from her. So that'd be a useful thing.
I'll try and find out her account and send it on to you after we finish talking.
But as I say, the downside of this, as we discussed, is the fact that now anyone that's in shape and works hard, because I'm like, yeah, well, it might not be. So all of things bloody tarred with this brush in this thing.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
In that gym of mine, the extra branch especially, actually, Cully, but the extra one, there's been a GB bobsleigh fella in there, and he's just a freak of nature. Freak, GB bobsleigh, so he's kind of one of the top 2% of all power athletes in the world. Never, he just eats food, and he's drug tested to the eyeballs, and so it's doable. But,
sure.
We're making the same point over and over, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
it's a shame, but yes.
I'm not going to mention the name, although anyone who knows the competition can put the pieces together. I used to have a client, an English lady in Dubai, who was, I'm trying to think now, probably 9 or 10 years older than me, and she got so into fitness in the space of the year working with me. She became a devotee to finding she saw her ultimate role models on social media, in this sport, and it was great for her because it's inspirational. And then she latched on to following one of the more prominent female CrossFitters, and she was like, I want to do everything she's doing. And I was like, well, you're not going to do everything she's doing, because you're 30 years older and you've got 2 kids and blah, 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 and you're in great shape. So we'll keep going along your path. Thank you very much. And she was crestfallen when this individual went to the Olympics and just was crap. And I was like, yeah, but did you see her physique when she went to an international sporting event where she was going to be drug tested, like you say, to the eyeballs? And she only had to do one thing, not everything, like they do in CrossFit, and she came 14th. How much of a change did she have to make? And I said, I'll leave it at that. You're an intelligent woman. You can figure out what may have been going on in the background. And she was like, but she wouldn't have been on things, would she? I was like, I'm not going to say that. You can go and figure it out yourself. But why she suddenly looked like a much, much smaller human being than she did 6 months ago.
There's a lot of it going on, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So who are we to kind of change the goalposts? But be aware, folks. There's quite a lot going on.
I mean, it's far more than you ever realize. It's like you and I can see behind the curtain. A friend of my parents a while back said to me, "Do you think our son's on something?" Like, how the fuck would I know? I mean, he's a guy in his late 20s who's in good shape and he goes to the gym a lot, but I don't know his lifestyle enough to know. I mean, he's in very good shape all year round, which is a bit of an inclination. But maybe he just works his ass off all year round. Who knows? He's not got to worry about menstrual cycle or hormones. So
There are machines out there that just want to devote their lives to the gym and eat well, and that's fair enough.
absolutely. I mean, he's a hard working lad. And if I say he's in the gym 4 or 5 days a week and he lives there, then he'll look good all year round. You know, I remember what it's like to be in my late 20s. All right. Okay. So going back to the newbie client then, what do you think are the most common missteps that people will just dive into when they go, right, I'm fully on board, I'm really enthusiastic, and they put the foot in every pothole on the way?
Well, there's a couple of things.
Outside of PEDs.
Well, besides that, and they're both opposites. One is not training hard enough,
mm-hmm.
and then going mega overboard. That's the training spectrum, the opposite ends. And then, of course, if they just want to get in good shape, then it's just getting the nutrition ass about face and then rewarding themselves when they do a session and reward themselves with something that's junk. And so that's kind of broad spectrum stuff. And then the other one is, going back to what we said 20 minutes ago, not really having a loose plan. It doesn't have to be a really structured plan, but a loose plan of what they're going to do, you know. And as I say, it doesn't have to be complicated or really rigid, but, you know, want to do this, then this, then this, then the rest of it, this, yeah. So I think a plan and either training not hard enough, which is, I find nearly everyone doesn't train hard enough,
mm-hmm.
And kind of like going at it for 2 or 3 weeks and then thinking, oh, okay, I can't be bothered. I'd be interested to hear what you think.
Pretty similar, to be honest. Like I say, it's the misconceptions that they have going into things. Going along, right, okay, I need to, like I say, they've got a militant idea, which tends to be too extreme, or they think if I show up, it's like the student who buys all the books and has them in his bedroom, you know, before his exams. It doesn't happen by osmosis. You've got to put the time in. That's definitely part of it. But I tend to see people jump from fad to fad, so that they're not consistent in any one thing. You know, it's not a case of I'll focus on getting the broader strokes right and, you know, and like taper into what I need to do within my lifestyle to bring about my results. It's a case of, oh, I did 3 weeks of this, but then my best mate recommended this because it works for him. Like, yeah, but you don't have his lifestyle or his genetics, or you don't like the foods he likes. So, and it's just that hopping from, like, you know, rock to rock to rock.
It's a good point. That is actually a really good point. You see people starting, as you say, you know, with the best will in the world, and they get sidetracked by this latest Instagram thing. I've got to say, we all get distracted. You see,
sure,
it's pretty cool. I'll give that a go, and I do it myself. So, who am I to judge? Yeah, that was a mistake. Try to stick on this boring, steady, consistent path, and you'll get there slowly, rather than kind of something magical pill, for want of a better description. You know, it's consistency, turning up, training hard. It's the boring stuff. That's what's going to get you there.
I think you summed up very well earlier the idea that you need a loose plan at the very least. And a lot of people, I find that daunting, the idea of, oh, I've got to change everything about my life. Whoa, stop, brakes on. No, you don't. And for the people that do struggle with the idea of change, I tend to say, right, prioritize one of 2 areas first. Think about your nutrition and get into the idea of training, but think about your nutrition, or do the opposite. Think about your training, get your schedule sorted out for your routine, your lifestyle. Think about where you need to go and be flexible, and we'll work on your food if you can't deal with a bigger change first. Because, as I'm sure you'll appreciate, the biggest hurdle and the easiest way to discourage someone is to give them so much to do at once. They're swamped and they go, I can't do this. You know, every January, what does the fitness industry do to everybody? You've got to change your entire life. Not going to happen.
You're absolutely right. I've just changed my accountant recently. and he's given me loads of stuff that I need to do, and I haven't got a clue. So I'm going, oh, fuck, I can't be bothered.
Right, okay.
Good lesson.
You know? Yeah.
So a really practical thing to do is, as I say, get someone in for a session. If that session works, I simply WhatsApp it. I take a photograph, WhatsApp it, and say, there you go. If I drop dead, that works. For a couple of weeks.
Right.
Or whatever. So that's just what's I'm saying, a concrete thing that someone can do. I've just done a session with this guy. That worked. Great. I can do that for 3 times a week,
Mm-hmm.
and so on and so forth. And then I say to them also, I'm not giving you too much information on nutrition, but maybe try to have this for breakfast. I don't say anything, try not to say anything unless they ask me, of course.
Sure.
And then you've given them the thing, they've done a session with you, they've got a concrete piece of paper, for want of a better word, of a thing. And I said, maybe have this for breakfast. And, if some people go, oh, brilliant, let's get on with this. Other people, they're not going to, but as you're well aware, you really gravitate towards the people that want the information, and you like people asking you questions, and you get more out of you. But, yeah, you can't preach to a dead horse, can you? You've got to be aware of who you're talking to. If they're not, if the eyes glaze over, I just stop talking. I don't jump to. I'm wasting time. So.
Like you said, you've got to keep the information relevant to the person that you're talking to as well. Like you said right at the start, back when I was recording podcasts last year and audio format only, I spoke to a coach in Dubai, a lovely English lady called Rowena. Now, she's a vegan, has been for a very long time, so is her husband. And we talked about the fact that her children are very young and they're not. They're allowed to eat what mummy and daddy want, but they have no overbearing influence. The kids get to essentially grow up, bad word to use these days, quote unquote normal. And one of the things we talked about at length was the fact that she says, like with every form of nutrition, there is so much overselling when it comes to vegetarianism and veganism. She's like, so much when people come to her and go, okay, I've been trying to live as a vegan and train as a vegan, but it costs me 90% of my wages every month. I can't keep doing this. She goes, right, first thing, stop looking at Instagram, stop buying all the glossy magazines because they're trying to sell you the glossy product. She's like, here's what I buy. And I feed 2 adults on this. You don't need to go to the shiny, whatever, high quality section of Marks and Spencer's or wherever it is you're going and buy all the stuff that starts at £15 a go. Fruit and vegetables for a start, that's cheap. And then think from there. It's just the relevant information without being like sell all the time, because that's also a massive turnoff.
Yeah, and funny if you said it, I'm always interested in, because you're probably aware, I've got a completely different nutritional kind of bent, but I'm always interested and with really successful, in shape, intelligent, and I say intelligent for a reason, kind of vegans who are long-term vegans.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to speak to them how they're doing that, and how their brain chemistry is, and how the muscle mass is, and their adipose tissue, and how the hormones are working. Because people are doing it well, they obviously know something pretty damn good.
Oh, she does. I mean, this girl in question, she's a mum of, I would say 2, maybe 3, but a mother of multiple children. She's also a physique competitor. She really is dialed in to what she's doing. She's very, very switched on with it.
That's very interesting. I'm probably a little bit too lazy to go that deep. But what I mean is, I'm always interested in extremes.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're zealots, and that's a good thing in my view. So I listen to these people and go, oh, yeah, I can see that would work. I might not agree with that, but I've learned something. And you can't just think my way is the only way. And I've learned many, many times that I'm very often wrong. So there you go.
But I say it pays to take that knowledge from people. What are your thoughts then on, for those people listening or watching this that don't live in the UK, there's been a lot in the news at the moment, and we're in the middle of June pretty much now, that the British government is considering a trial for the Ozempic, the diabetes drug to deal with obesity. Now, I personally find that an atrocious concept. What are your thoughts on that? The idea that rather than bring about some common sense approach, no, we're going to prescribe mass drugs. It's another version of the opioid crisis in America, surely. Deal with the health crisis by giving out drugs.
I wonder who's behind that push.
Yeah, probably the company in Norway or whatever it is that makes it. Because I mean, the British government have said we will conduct a small 2-year trial to give you the time to build up a massive stock. Well, I wonder what they're going to be in favour of a successful trial.
Like all these bloody things, rather than looking for rather than whatever we decide your nutritional thing is, rather than eating well,
mm-hmm.
that means to people, of course, as we can discuss that, of course, but rather than eating well, training well, having a less stressful lifestyle, stop putting kind of poisons on your body, staying up late, artificial light, electromagnetic stress, computers all the time, and so on. So the list is endless. Rather than maybe educating, not telling people not to do it, educating people,
Mm-hmm.
and people aren't done, they're going to chuck tablets at us, which, when is this going to end? Obviously we're designed to move however that movement is, and we're designed to eat in an ancestral way.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom line, you cannot deny that we've only evolved 0.02% since we were hunter-gatherers, for God's sake. 0.02%, that's like bugger all.
Yes. Yeah.
And yet we're trying to eat this, do that, take this tablet for this. Oh, God, it's quite depressing.
Like I said, I find it to be an atrocious concept along the same lines of any kind of 30-day January plan, or people that see bariatric surgery as the golden solution. Why, for a start, can't you as an individual and a broader community take responsibility for your own lifestyle? That I can't comprehend. But you don't learn anything by taking drugs. No. Because unless you're going to go on, I'm 25, I'm 35, I'm going to take these drugs for the next 50 years, you're going to go on a program of these drugs. So what do you do 3 days after you stop your program? Like, what do you do on day 35 of the 30-day program? If you haven't learned to look after yourself, you go back to what you're doing before day one.
But you're a good cash cow, though, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But yeah, that's part of the reason why I find it almost an offensive concept, the idea that the government, rather than say the British public, grow up a little bit, start taking responsibility for how you live, and hopefully you will be healthier as a result. They're going, oh, no, we'll just buy in some drug from Europe and put it out on. And bear in mind, the taxpayer will have to pay the hump for that because we have the NHS.
I mean, what do we know here talking to each other? But yes, it's fucking ridiculous. Surely, wouldn't it be lovely if some government went into schools, went into workplaces, and said, right, you need to do schools, for example. It is mandatory that there needs to be PE sessions, whatever that is, once a day. Just get off our asses, do something once a day. And at work, there must be a money pot where you can all join a gym and you can all do some form of physical activity. Or
sure.
One of the things is some bloody incentive rather than just eat less, eat Diet Coke, whatever the hell it is. And
yeah.
It's sad. What do you do?
It's almost a circular conversation again. We come back to the likes of the general public didn't know about this drug until the likes of the Hollywood set started going, oh, guess what? We've gotten in shape inside of 8-10 weeks because we've been taking a diabetes medication and I've lost a lot of weight. It's not meant for you.
That's what you're saying.
It's meant for people that have got problems with insulin. Because the side effect is you have an appetite suppressant, which means you lose weight, and there are a few other effects as well. It's the same. What's the popular bodybuilding drug I'm thinking of? The one that was a bronchial drug for asthmatics. It's Anavar or Winstrol, one of the two.
I don't know, mate, but I know what you're on about.
It's the idea this medication was meant for people who have problems breathing, and one of the side effects is it actually decreases body fat, and people are like, "Oh, I'll take that." Yes.
Yeah, it's a bit odd. I guess like all these things, if it's meant for its purpose, great. But of course, it will be abused, and it will be an excuse for you not to get into your lifestyle, not
sure,
and all these things we're just talking about.
I mean, and of course, one of the other things is the fact that there's no research into this drug on a long-term basis.
That sounds. We won't go into the COVID conversation.
Yeah, but it's the same thing. The idea of great, okay, we're all going to take this drug, but we've not looked into it.
Yeah, well, we better avoid that one, mate. To be fair.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's current prime ministerial investigations in this country. Yeah, we'll skirt past this one. So let's stick with kids and obesity for the moment, then, because you're a parent yourself. I'm not, so I'm coming from this as a point of an observer rather than a parent. Where do you think schools and a broader community should be going to address lifestyle and health and obesity for younger people? Because as far as I can see, it's massively not being addressed at the moment.
Not that I can see, but I think it needs to be a priority, like the 3 R's. Arithmetic. I think it needs to be a priority, and therefore, if it's prioritized by a higher body, then surely it trickle down to schools. We teach them to read, teach them to do maths, and so on and so forth, and we need to keep them healthy.
Sure.
Way you go around that, and once that then becomes doctrine, surely then we'll do all these things we spoke about. We have a PE session once a day, and so on and so forth. But of course, kids these days, it is very difficult. And I'm a parent myself. And of course, when my kids are born, it's right. They're only going to eat this. They're never going to eat this. They're always going to exercise. Of course, there's iPads and there's, oh my God. So, you shouldn't ever judge parents really. But because, when I was young, there's none of that stuff. So we're running around. And so we're fighting this battle of even just getting them outside.
Sure.
So we can get them outside, get them engaged at things. That'll be great. And of course, there are other things that are prevalent now that weren't then. Kids are reaching puberty really early. And why is that? It's because of xenoestrogens called obesogens and stuff like that. And that's making sexual maturity way too early.
Sure, yeah.
Then there's all sorts of complications. So, you go down to the beach here in Exmouth, and unfortunately, all the kids are fat. I'm telling you the obvious. What do we do about it? Is, in my view, prioritise at school that it is a proper subject.
Yes, I agree with that.
That's what needs to be done. Otherwise, even if you just come out of a money point of view, the NHS are going to have to fork out more and more and more and more and more. It's this year, it's this. In 10 years' time, it's going to be worse. In 10 years' time, it's worse again. So, how we go about that, some clever dick will figure that out. But there is a problem, and it needs to be prioritised properly at national level. That's my view.
Yeah, I pretty much do agree with that. I mean, I forget the guy's name. Back when I used to watch TED Talks quite regularly on YouTube, there was one dealing with he was a very, very high-ranking US officer, was talking in the talk, and he had gone throughout his career, and he ended up as the head of basically depot recruitment training, looking after the entire structure of the base and the recruit curriculum for, I think it was just general army recruits. And this was over 10 years ago now, so I hate to think what the cost is now. But he was talking about how, because socially we've devolved away, as you said, from the idea of kids run around from a very early age. They've got natural endurance, they've got strength in their legs, their bodies are just used to being active in sport. You get kids that are 17, 18, 19, 20 trying to join the military who physically are not competent enough in themselves. Not to mention the fact that they might skirt through just the entry-level fitness requirements, but they're overweight, they have little endurance, they don't have the immune system to suddenly cope with prolonged physical exertion. So he was talking about the actual cost to the government, because as soon as someone gets injured, as we know, you and I from military circles, you have to be rehabbed back to a point of previous fitness. But of course, as recruits, there has to be an entire facility for every single person that gets injured. They have to have medical staff, they have to have rehabilitation staff, they have to have the process to get you back to the line to then go, do you want to continue with this training or do you want to leave? Yeah. And he was saying that this runs into as it was, like say 10, 12, 15 years ago, the video, tens of millions of dollars a year. He said getting people to the point of being unfit enough as they were in the first place before they go, no, I don't want to do this, it's hard work.
I think actually it's become really critical since, social media and the access to the internet. I think probably kids were normally going outside and doing the normal thing. It's just dropped off a cliff. And
sure.
I'm a parent myself, and it's really bad. Kids are doing bugger all. And what I do as a practical point for my kids, and I own a gym for God's sake. Every time my kids want to go on their laptops, which is all the fucking time, I say to them, right, you've got to do 50 squats, 40 press-ups, 40 sit-ups, and then you can do it. That's the only thing I can do. You see, and I've got a gym for God's sake, so I can imagine other parents, the poor buggers, what are they going to do?
Sure.
So it really is an issue, and it's dropped off since this whole social media shenanigans and the access of games and your laptops, and how people get back from it, I don't quite know.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly thought for a moment when the Nintendo Wii came out years ago, the idea of interactive gaming, that might actually be a thing, and it just didn't find the niche that I thought it would.
No,
sadly. Yeah, exactly. Although, to be fair, you shouldn't need a computer to jump around. You should piss off outside and do it yourself.
We're probably old school dinosaurs, mate.
Yeah. Well, I've said for years, and I know I've said on previous podcast episodes, where I don't believe that physical education, health education, should be the only topic in schools that you don't have to pass.
Yeah, this is exactly correct. You know what I mean?
Every other topic, you have ultimately a pass-fail grade. You have to achieve certain benchmarks throughout the year.
that's
exactly why is it not part of health education?
It needs to be prioritized as a proper subject. Exactly correct.
Yeah, yeah. Sadly, I don't see myself in a position in the future unless something radically changes where I can influence that.
Sure, you're not going to be the education minister, but good luck.
Yeah. I don't think I've got the right mates in the right places to get that job. Sadly, especially given the current British government, I really don't have the right school tie for that.
You definitely do not.
Right, okay. I know because it's already into the early evening that you've got things you need to do this evening as a family man and a business owner. So we're going to cut this around about 45 minutes, which we're at now. As I finish every episode, I'll say goodbye to you properly when we stop recording. But thank you very much for your time. It's been great talking to you. As I say to everybody, business, social media, website. How can people get in contact with you? Find out where your gyms are. Fill your boots. Go nuts.
First of all, thanks very much, Rich. It's a pleasure.
Not a problem.
If you want to get into the weeds more so people can go away with concrete information on how to improve nutrition training, home, or whatever it might be, please, we can do that, of course.
Cool. Let's do another one now.
If people want to get in touch with me, I guess there's loads of ways, but maybe Instagram will do the trick, and it's PFP 24/7 gyms. That's PFP 24/7 gyms, and that's kind of me. And I've got the usual Facebook, which is PFP Exeter.
Cool.
Instagram will probably do the trick, I think.
I'll put your contact. I'll put that and information in the description on YouTube when I put this up as well, so that will be there for people to see.
Thank you, mate.
But James, for now, thanks again, buddy. It's been awesome. And I think from what you said, we should schedule another one of these in the future when it fits your schedule, and we'll talk a bit more in depth about, as you said, hormones, nutrition, everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be a pleasure, mate.
All right. Take care, buddy. Thank you.